Hey, badasses, welcome back to the podcast. We have an incredible guest for you today, as you heard from the intro already. But meet Nicole Burbank. She is such an incredible woman. She's got all kinds of stuff going on. I loved the energy that I felt from you right at the very beginning. And I just knew instantly, I'm like, this woman can help a lot of the audience that is Ladies Kicking Ass. Because I know y'all are wearing like 5,000 hats and you think you can get all the shit done. And even though you can, doesn't mean you should. And Nicole's going to share her story about how she kind of dealt with that stuff herself too, and what her previous background was with running clinics, and how she created this new program to be able to help women to not get to that place of burnout and overwhelm and I just don't want to do this shit anymore. So Nicole, thank you so much for being here. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll jump right into your business and why you created this program.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me anytime that I can help empower another woman. I'm on board for. So super, super excited to be here. So thank you for that. A little bit about myself. I am very weird. Like I'm a weird girl and I was always afraid to to be unique and to be myself and to be authentic. But I am. I don't own a TV. I read books. Like I'm just this kind of like big science nerdy girl. And I have a daughter who is 9 and she is my entire world. All I've ever wanted to be was a mom. And so I was so blessed enough to do that. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businesswoman. I absolutely love business. And when I was in my 20s, I always gravitated, ever since I was a little kid, I always gravitated towards entrepreneurship. I had like a little baking thing in like elementary school and I would sell to the kids. And I was always thinking entrepreneur. And so my background started in operations and then it went into the passion that I found with helping and doing more clinical care at the practices that I had. So big science nerd is like the best way to describe me. And I just have a huge passion for helping people and impacting this world as best as I can with the little bit of time I have here.
That's beautiful because we need more spirits and more positivity and stuff like that going on in our world and people that want to help each other. I think there's like a genuine just like pit of your gut that people really do want to do those things. And a lot of times people are scared to like actually step out and do it. For fear maybe they will be questioned, they've got some imposter syndrome, they've got all of that. So you have wanted to do this, from just a little girl's situation. I can resonate with that a lot too. It was like, how can I hustle and make money even from a younger age so I can take care of myself? I don't have to ask my mom for money. And that's just been really ingrained in me too. So I love that about you as well. But what was kind of like your journey getting into a professional career? You mentioned that you were running clinics. What kind of clinics were you running and how did that lead you to where you're at what you're doing now?
Yeah. It's so funny how we always like look back and we connect the dots and we're like, God, now I can see the reasons why I like these things that I wanted so badly didn't work out, but it opened up this path and stuff like that. So I started my college with going to medical school. I was pre med and took OChem and passed it, but it was like, oh no, I'm way too young. I don't want to work this hard. I want to just have fun, all that good stuff. And so
Mhm.
for that, I did behavioral psychology, which I was not as passionate about. Didn't realize how beneficial it would come into my practice now. And just worked in more of the operational space, got an MBA, kind of did like the check your boxes kind of thing, climbing the corporate ladder. And then I got pregnant and I was like, I really want to figure out how to be a mom and an entrepreneur. At the time before Willow was born, I was dealing with extreme digestive dysfunction. And so I was kind of going down the rabbit hole of fixing myself. I had medical doctors telling me it was completely normal and I was fine. And I was like, no, there's something really wrong here. Like, this isn't normal. I'm 24, 26 years old. I shouldn't be having this type of issues. And
Yeah.
so after having Willow, it only got worse. And I, by the grace of God, met my old business partner, and he was a chiropractor and he taught me about functional medicine. And I fell in love with it. And he loved that I was just an operations person. I could look at companies, I could create systems, and I could create flows and just make people successful. And so he said, we need to team up and we need to like expand this. So we did stem cell therapy and we did chiropractic functional medicine. And it was amazing. I went back to school, got my nutritional therapy practitioner certification, and really just dived into precision and functional medicine, helping people heal at the cellular level. And then kind of went through a divorce. Well, didn't kind of went through a divorce, kind of went through this kind of awakening and just hitting rock bottom. And then that's when I created YHHJ.
Beautiful. What was the reason why you decided to create YHHJ? Like, was there a catalyst to that somewhere in your life that you're like, I have to help people? You mentioned that you hit rock bottom, and we like to talk about the real shit on this podcast because lots of women are at that spot or they've been there. Maybe they're stuck there and they are like, I cannot see a way out, even though maybe they've heard other people's stories of how they've come out. I've really realized through this podcast, the more we get raw with things like that, and that women will send me DMs and be like, I've heard people talk about it, but her story was just like my story. Was
Yeah.
there a story coming out of that that made you just think, I have to help these other women? And that's what propelled you to start your program that you have today? Or how'd you get out of that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I went through the divorce and I had everything. I had the perfect house. I had all the money that I could imagine. I was successful. I had 2 clinics with my business partner. I had a beautiful daughter. I had a husband, right? Like I had everything that I had thought would make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that I never made me happy. And I didn't even know what made me happy or who I was. And I kind of hit rock bottom. Towards the end of my marriage, I was suicidal. I didn't understand what was happening in my life. I couldn't understand how I had everything. I checked off every box on my list and I was still, if not more miserable than before. And
Yeah.
so I cut the whole tree down and I said, I have to leave my husband. I realized at the time, like, I love him and I still do to this day love him. But I was never, I don't know if I was ever really in love. I don't think I knew what love was when we started our relationship. I was really young when we started our relationship. And my business partner and I weren't seeing eye to eye on our paths. I'm very much like, I want to impact the world. I don't care if I make $1 billion. I just want to save lives. And he was a little bit different in that aspect, and that's okay. We just weren't seeing eye to eye on that. And I had to say, it has to come from in here. There's something going on in here that I need to figure out why I'm not happy. And ultimately, it came down to I wasn't showing up as just me, this kind of awkward, not always put together human being who likes to beat to her own drum. And I wasn't
Yeah.
showing up that way. And I realized that I was sabotaging a lot of my life because of it. And so when I started YHHJ, it was really nutrition based. But as I started to heal and evolve and really understand who I was like, oh my God, it's so much more than just nutrition. Women, especially, because we have so much societal pressure now to be
Yeah.
a certain way, to look a certain way. There's so many things that we have to be that we really don't have to be. And so that's kind of where YHHJ came. It was helping women find the ability to speak their truth authentically and without shame, guilt, or pain, kind of encompassing that.
That is beautiful. And kudos to you for doing it, because a lot of women are sitting in a place where you were at, where you claim, like, I cut the tree down. Like, I was not happy. Somebody gave you a list and you checked all the boxes. Is it fair to say that? And you think, well, everybody's looking at me and they think I have everything, except this shit ain't making me happy. I have to figure something else out. And it's one of the bravest things I think we can do is to, one, acknowledge that, and then secondly, act on that. Because what difference has that made in your life since you started living in your more authentic nerdy way.
Yeah. You know what's funny is my life, the pace is so much slower, but yet I'm so much more abundant. So I used to run around like a chicken without a head. And I was always, that was my famous line, right? I'm too busy. I have too much on my plate. Da, 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 right?
Mhm.
Now here I am. If anything, I probably have more on my plate. I'm a single mom. I'm a co-founder of YHHJ. Like I have more responsibilities, but I'm so much calmer. I'm so much more capable of saying yes when it really feels good and dang saying no when it does not feel aligned. And so I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing is I'm less stressed. I'm just happier and not stressed.
That is beautiful. How did people react to you when you decided to take that step in living more authentically yourself? I'm sure there was a lot of people. Obviously, there's a divorce involved here, so there's that itself, but other people that are around you too. When you start stepping more into your authentic self, especially if you've been kind of living at what you thought was your pace, but like deep in your heart, like, I can't keep running at this, something was definitely wrong there. And you stand up for that. Did you have people saying, like, are you crazy, Nicole? Like, what are you doing? And how did you deal with the naysayers of you taking that new path?
Yeah. So I was really thankful. I had a friend tell me right at the very beginning, um, he had gone through a divorce and he said, I really wish I would have listened to my therapist. She said, go into a cocoon. Don't let anybody in. Just go into a cocoon and figure your shit out. Don't listen to the noise because the noise that was coming in my mind, right? I was like, my ex and I are going to co-parent. We're going to do it this way. We are not going to not be okay and strong and like a good unit for my daughter. And everybody was like, it's never going to work. It's da 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 da, right? And I'm so
Yeah.
thankful that in the back of my mind, I had his thing of just go into a cocoon, go into a cocoon. So I really shut the world out for a while, which was really hard because on the platform that I am on social media, on Instagram mainly, I portrayed a perfect life. And I had to own that part that I played this perfect character and the perfect life and the perfect husband, perfect family. And then I had to own up to that was all a facade. That wasn't real. And I think that's why I'm so dang raw on my Instagram now is because I don't ever want to portray something I'm not. I want to stand in that power. But I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I still stick to today. If I'm making a decision, I really try not to ask other people. I just try to go within and say, what do you want to do? You already have the answer right here. You're just
Yeah.
scared to make the decision, so you're asking somebody else so that it's easier. You can kind of
Yeah.
blame when it goes to shit or something. But so I think
Yes.
the biggest piece of advice I could give someone.
That oh, I love that. I love that. So many of us like overthink shit and then you've got 15 people's opinions afterwards and then you end up going with your own thought process in the first place if you're really going after what you want to there. So, thank you for sharing that. That's so awesome. What an incredible backstory. This is why we have women like you on the podcast to share like you know what? I portrayed this perfect little life and I thought everything was great, and this is what I put out there, but then I got to be real. And it's probably a hell of a lot easier to live in the realness of who you are now than trying to put on the facade, right?
It is. And I will say just something too, kind of to go back on what you were asking earlier. There were lots of people that left my life. A lot more people left than stuck around. But I can tell
Hmm.
you the community I have now are my people. And so you have to know when you're taking off masks that you're going to lose people because you're not compatible anymore. They want to go out and party every night and I'm not drinking anymore. It's just not going to work, right? And that's okay. Phases and chapters of our lives sometimes are meant to end. And that's the biggest thing I can say is whenever someone leaves your life, if you're scared of that, just know that that's God's way of giving you more. You got to clear
Yeah.
space to get more. And so that's a big thing that I do want to say is you are going to have some fallout or drop off, and that's okay. It's only going to get better once that happens.
Yes. Oh, yes. If you've been through a divorce, that's a big one that you really figure out who your people are.
Yeah.
Um, and even fallouts with business partners. You can say I've had business partners that I've had that same situation happen before, a divorce. It is very similar because you do so much of your life together in a business, just like you do with your spouse. It's really like when I had my business partner at the beginning of my septic company, when we split up that business partnership and I bought him out, it was like going through a divorce again. Who gets what? How we splitting the shit? People start getting all, you know,
And
big
then
and
money.
pompous, and the money situation comes in and it's a nightmare. So, I mean, even if you're not in a situation where you're like going through a divorce, you may be in that situation with a business partnership. It can be tough. And even in business, you see like which ones go with them and they're like, "Oh, that person must be a real ass or something because everybody's talking." Just stay true to yourself. I know when I went through my divorce too, like my ex-husband was such an asshole and he would like blast all this stuff all the time. I never tried to stick up for myself. I never said anything about it because I knew the truth would eventually reveal itself, of which it obviously did. So it's one of those things. I think sometimes when people are going through tough things like this, they feel like they need to stand up and defend themselves and they need to, let everybody know that that's not how they are or that's not what happened. I love your analogy of the cocoon because just be quiet. It's amazing what happens when you just bring the peace around yourself. Peace will follow that. It's magnetic. When someone is a peaceful aura, it's magnetic. People want to be around that because so many people are in just straight up chaos all the time. Do you
Yeah.
see that?
And you don't realize how impactful you are because you're an expander. We talk a lot about that in the practice, right? Who are people you want to be like? Those are the people showing you can do it. The famous people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they're innovators. They're telling people like you can make an iPhone if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And so utilize those people, like utilize it that way. Like you modeling that is impacting other people's lives and you don't even realize it because they may never get the chance to tell you.
Yes. You never know what's going on around you. The people that you impact, you have no idea how far that ripple effect actually goes. It's just consciously choosing to show up and be a good example and to be positive and spread that magnetic energy around to people. It's amazing that people will be like, "Oh yeah, I listened to the podcast," or "Yeah, I saw your stuff," and I'm sure you get that with your social media stuff. It's beautiful. There's so many things in here. I was like, I could scroll through this forever. There's so much good stuff in there that people can educate themselves on because you took the steps to be able to make that information for people. So it's just, you really have no idea how much, when you cast something out there, how many people it's going to reach. With today's world, it's completely limitless.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, let's kind of switch gears here a little bit. I would love to jump into a lot of the women that listen to this podcast are service based business entrepreneurs. They're moms. They're trying to figure out how to juggle 9 million things at the same time, all while listening to a bunch of shit that's like, you should have a balanced life. And then they wonder why they're so stressed out all the time. And how do I can do this, so I should do this. And I don't want to, offload on inconvenience anybody. But then you hit this point that we call overwhelm and the verge of burnout. Talk to us about how that manifests itself physically, maybe emotionally in our lives, and when you really need to check yourself.
Yeah. And the goal is we call that the bottle burst situation, right? And we want to get you before you burst. But essentially signs that you're probably living in what we call a sympathetic state. So we have two states that we live in. Sympathetic, that's our fight or flight. Now, ancestrally, blueprint, DNA kind of way, that's, you're driving down the road, a car's about to hit you. The sympathetic state is meant to swerve, right? That's really what its innate blueprint is. Now, parasympathetic is our rest and digest. That is our calmer state. That's the state we're supposed to be in most of the time. But more and more, we're seeing women, especially, living in this sympathetic state. So this will look like brain fog. And this is more physical elements, right? brain fog, fatigue, forgetfulness, missing things, digestive dysfunction, your cycle's off, blood sugar dysregulation, hormonal imbalance, weight gain, especially in the belly, hips, and thighs and buttocks. These are all going to be really in quick indicators physically. Now, emotionally, it's going to look like short tempered, impatient, not able to regulate yourself emotionally. So, driving with emotion, maybe outbursts of crying or anger, maybe depression or anxiety. It can manifest even into more things, right? If we keep going and working at this level, then we're looking at chronic diseases like autoimmune issues, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. So it's, I don't think I think we're starting to see it trend and people are really starting to wake up to it. But we're, as women especially, and I love being an entrepreneur and I like to go. Like, that's my speed. I'm structured, rigid, routined. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think it's bad to have imbalance in life. I don't have balance. I am definitely 100% in my business. 50% of my time I have Willow, right? And then the other stuff trickles in if I have time for it. So it's okay to be out of balance if it's what you want. But if it's not aligned with what you want, it is going to mess you up.
Yeah.
And so that's how I see it manifest in those kind of elements.
I love that you brought that up, if it's what you want, because a lot of times I'm very much that too. I spend a ton of time working in my business, but it's one of my greatest passions. I was talking to my girlfriend, and when they ask you the question, like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, working.
Making
Because I truly do love what I'm doing, especially this. Like, this is so much fun for me. I've made so many amazing women friends that I didn't have before because I've been working in shops with dudes my entire life. That I was like, this whole podcast started because I told my daughter, I need to start making some friends. Like, she was getting older. I'm like, I don't have to be here to do everything all the time. I need to make some friends. And so I just started a podcast so I could meet women. And it worked out, and it's been so beautiful to do this, but you have to try to find outlets where you can bring yourself back together here too. Because if you're in like grind mode, working all the time, like that, just constant, does that really put you into kind of that burnout mode too? Or do you think people can really consistently keep working at that? Because it's a big argument with people if they say, no, but I love the hustle, I love the grind, but can you really sustain that for a long time?
Yeah, no, not at all. In my educated opinion, it's impossible because we run out of those hormones. So our main stimulant hormones are going to be cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and adrenaline, testosterone as well, but we don't have as much as men. Or you know what I mean by there.
Yeah.
So with that being said, if I'm constantly, and by the way, we have to then bring in some of that feminine energy versus masculine energy. So when you're in action, you are masculine. And we have both within us, and so do men. Feminine is more your nurture. We are not actionable. We are kind of creating, right? Everything comes to us, we create. So when I teach women through the YHHJ program, I teach them to be feminine badasses because I am in my feminine all of the time. There are times that I'll have to go to a business meeting if I'm trying to, do something, a pitch a corporate deal or something like that, where I'll go into more of a sales, masculine, actionable role. But for the most part, I am rigid and structured and consistent in a very calm, nurturing, loving energy. And so that's the thing. That's the biggest thing I could give your audience is understand that you can be more consistent by structuring your day with joy and pleasure kind of filtered in that. So let's just talk about today for me. I woke up and I meditated. So I always get grounded first thing in the morning, meditated. I made a great 2 salads because I had a shadow work practice with a client. So I did that, went to the gym. So here's a lot of play and joy for me. That's fun to me, but still very structured and very rigid, right?
Yeah.
Then I went and did client work. Then I got my hair done and worked while I was getting my hair done. Then I went and cold plunged, laid out in the beautiful sun here in Arizona, got a little bit of a tan for about 30 minutes, and I got ready to do this. And then after this, I'm going on a walk. So there's a lot of rigidness and a lot of structure, but nothing about that seemed rushed.
Mm-mm.
And everything I wanted that fills my cup up is getting done today.
Sure. I think that's something in this industry for sure. It is a lot of us in these kinds of industries work with a lot of men. If we are running a company, we are running a company that employs a lot of men. I know for me that is something that is extremely difficult for me to switch from, especially when I come home.
Yep.
Because you're so in charge and like, let's get shit done. Like, that's just my mentality all the time. And then when I come home, I really have to sometimes check myself and like, you can't talk. Not that I talk bad to people at work. That sounded really shitty. But like, you can't keep like pushing and like, let's go, let's get stuff done. Um, to your kids when you get home. Like, it's not their job to produce for you. Like, it is not, same thing with my husband. We work together in the business, and that's a bitch sometimes to differentiate with things because we go to work and then I have a really hard time coming home and like taking that masculinity off and just being in my feminine energy. How would you speak to women? I know there's a lot of them that behave just like that to help them be able to do that a little bit better.
Yeah, it's going to first take a lot of awareness and a lot of presence on your end. It is not something that you just can flip a switch. It's a skill set. Just like
Mhm.
you being the boss babe that you are is a skill set. You've developed it and refined it over time. And so one of the things that I do is I start to think, well, what is feminine to me?
Yeah.
Feminine to me is grounded, is stable, is calm. Okay, well, what are things I need that make me feel that way? For me, physical touch is my love language. So snuggles with my daughter or a hug from a friend or something like that can be helpful. Um, Grounding walks, anything that you think is going to calm you. So let's just say walking. Walking
Mhm.
really brought you back down to that parasympathetic. Maybe it's driving home and listening to some Hertz 432, right? Something, anything to just down regulate you into a parasympathetic state. That's what you're going to want to do. So just like I structure my day, you have to be present enough and take enough planning. That's the biggest thing people don't do, right? Is we don't plan enough. Plan ahead knowing that you're going to go like this in and out of your day between masculine and feminine, because you were right, your kids want the more feminine nurturing, right, mom, and your
Yeah.
husband would probably, right, want that too, because then you run into that role. It's very hard for two people regardless of their sex, it's very hard for two to be masculine. So one's got to
Yeah.
drop feminine. So and in my marriage, because I was very much masculine driven, it forced my ex-husband into more of that feminine role. And it's hard to explain because people think, oh, he was feminine. No, he was just more dismissive and like
Yeah.
he couldn't be his masculine, which wasn't fair to him, right?
Yep.
Um, so really grounding yourself in that way and not coming home until you do feel like you're calm and that you can say, hey, I can leave this. That's the biggest thing, right? Nothing has to get done. That's why the first thing I tell to a client who's like a workaholic, I'm like, what's at risk if you didn't send that email? Does
Right.
anything bad really happen
Right.
other than you set a boundary of like, I'm not answering emails after 5 p.m. anymore? So those are the tools, like the allowing yourself to live in that energy and kind of like learning how to do it. It takes a lot of practice. It's something that we do in each week of our program because it isn't There's no magical thing I can say today that will get somebody to be able to switch it. But by doing things that are more nurturing and grounded based, you're going to feel a lot more regulated and not so, when you probably get home, you feel like heavy here and like energetically here.
Mhm.
Yeah, we want you to just feel like you're floating all the time.
Yeah.
Well, not all the time, but most of the time.
Sounds lovely to be floating all the time.
It is.
Well, I think too, just to kind of like moving through this, if you don't pay attention to these things, there's this big, ugly, awful, silent killer that will literally fuck you up if you don't pay attention to how you allow it, because you do allow it to control your life, and that is stress. I know for myself, I have been in like such when I had my daughter in 2009, I started a business in 2009. So that's when I started my first business. I have just been in this go mode, like whether it's mom, whether it's the business, for 15 years. And a couple of years ago, I was like, there's something not right here. Like, I'd sleep 4 hours a night. I'd get right back up and get after it again. Like, I could just function. And the older I get, I'm like almost 42 this year. I'm like, this shit cannot continue. Like, you can feel the damage that it's doing to your body. Not only does that show up in blood work and everything else in your life, but like you're talking gut health, like sleep is insane because I would work until 1 o'clock in the morning and then go get 4 hours of sleep, which was never really sleep in the first place because I never slept long enough to get into sleep. It was like a cat nap. And then you go back at it again year after year after year after year, that shit builds up and it does not great things to you. If we don't check our stress, what are we at risk of?
Yeah, you're at risk of hitting a wall, right? And once you hit that wall, there's no return button. So you really get kind of screwed. And that's mainly your hormones. So I like to say that hormones are the conductor of the orchestra. And if the conductor's gone, we're not going to have the drums playing and the violin playing and whatever else is in a orchestra playing because it doesn't know when to start because there's no conductor. And so when we have this constant sympathetic state over time, you will eventually crash. I like to say that you have test tubes. You're given one test tube in each: cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, adrenaline. Once those bad boys are gone, you're done. Then you're on hormone therapy. Hope that helps. And your quality of life sucks. So the first question I usually ask people is, why are you working so hard? Like, what's your why? Like, give me a valid reason of why. Sell it to me. Give me your best sales pitch of why you're working so hard. And more than likely, they don't necessarily know. And that's okay.
Mhm.
Neither did I. I was doing it because society told me I should be a badass bitch and I could do it. And I was a perfectionist and an overthinker and a people pleaser. And so that was a great combination to make me want to be, successful. And
Yeah.
so why are you doing it? And why do you have to do it so fast? There's a great TikTok I saw the other day, and it was like, why are you worried about what other people are doing or where they're at? God has you in its own lane, or universe, or whoever you believe in, right? Has you in
Mhm.
its own race. You're racing against yourself. So you can go at whatever pace, but know that there's no returns on the past. You have to be so present now. And so, what are we doing it for? Why are we working so hard? And if the end result isn't a great answer, that's where you got to start to think like, oh, how can I still have this thing that I want so badly, but also have this amazing fulfilled life? And again, it's
Mhm.
not completely balanced. It
No.
never will. But at least you can be more balanced and
Mhm.
actually enjoy your life and not feel like it's just driving by.
Yeah. It happens to the best of us, especially if you're trying to build a business, because everybody says, oh, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta like, strike while it's hot, you gotta keep going. And then sometimes you like sit down, you're like, if you end up taking a little bit of a break, I've noticed this in my companies, when you take a little bit of a break and then you realize the shit didn't break, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to be working 15 hours a day. I think too, if list down the stuff you have to take care of, like you talked about, planning is everything. I think that's a big part of it. Can you delegate it? Can you give it to somebody else? Like, can you hire this out? Can you do something with it? Like, stop trying to do everything all the time and realize, give yourself 4 hours that you're actually working on stuff. It's amazing how much shit you can get done in 4 hours if you put your phone away and shut the door and just get stuff done. Like, that's my big thing at work. I go in, I shut my door for 4 hours. Like, this is my focus time. Then I have an hour and a half to 2 hours to help anybody else that needs anything, or I can work on other little projects I'm working on. But at least I got the things done I needed to that day and not bringing it home. And I would bring my computer home and feed my kids real fast and then jump back on it and stay on it all night long. And how much of the stuff are you missing out on because you think you have to do this? You got to be working all the time. You've just let something go, and you'll see it is possible to work less and it not fall apart.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that. So in psychology and in spirituality, we have three parts essentially, right? We have the mind, body, and soul. And the mind is just a computer, and that mind is chattering all day long, right? It's taking past experiences and inserting it into your reality and making you kind of dictate which way and direction and thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And so if you don't quiet that mind and realize nothing is of immediate need, and you take a step back and you say, well, shoot, like you said, okay, well, what if I'm just hyper focused for 4 hours and then I get 2 hours of joy and pleasure? Like I would never sit and lay out for a half an hour. I would feel too guilty. Like, no, I just need to work. But then I was burnt out and then I was scrolling on TikTok. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
So am I really working? No. Right. So it's being honest with yourself and being like, okay, when anybody says I'm too busy, I'm like, well, I know what that means. I was that person.
Yeah.
It just means that you're too sympathetic and you have too much chaos and you don't have probably good boundaries. You're more than likely a people pleaser and you feel like you can't ask for help because for some reason, maybe you have a wound around it that people will think less of you, or you'll get rejected, or you'll get fired, or whatever the case may be. And so in YHHJ, we really focus. Our first pillar of care is emotional health, and that's all of that. We regress people back. We bring past micro traumas in to understand why we tick the way we tick, or why we have patterns and habits and behaviors the way we have them, really rechanging the neuroplasticity in the brain. And that gives you to have that kind of flow and like less overwhelm with your day.
That's beautiful. I think a lot of people need that. So tell us, what is this program that you offer through YHHJ, and how can people find out about it?
Yes, absolutely. So YHHJ stands for, by the way, Your Healthy Happy Journey. And we really wanted to encompass that. We wanted it to be about finding your healthy, happy journey. Like what works for you? We believe in uniqueness and bioindividuality. And that means that everyone's different. And so we have a 12-week course that we do. We take cohorts. So we start every Monday with a new cohort. And essentially, we work through our 4 pillars of care each week. So emotional health is our first pillar of care. Sleep hygiene is our second. Nutrition, and then exercise. We integrate neuroscience, psychology, functional medicine, precision medicine, all of it into it. So we're looking at you from a whole body approach. When I started YHHJ, it was all nutrition, like I said earlier. And then I started to see, well, shoot, my food addictions and things that I had going on with food were really emotionally driven. Whoa, let me like get into this. And then I started to understand how a lot of my patterns and behaviors were what was keeping me heavier. I was 20 pounds heavier. And so over time, we built the methodology out and we created a system, because what people want is they want to get from A to Z, right? So they go right to Z, they think.
Yeah.
What they don't know is that they need to go A to B, B to C, C to D, and so forth. And so in the 12-week program, that's exactly what we do. We do it in phases. I basically took all of the client care that I've done in the past almost decade, and then my self's work and my business partner Kelsey's work. And we just created this methodology that literally takes people from A to Z in a very methodical way that's easy to digest and not overwhelming and easy to integrate into your busy life. A lot of our clients are entrepreneurs, are either stay-at-home moms with like 14 kids and all the things. So it can
Yeah.
work for any type of person.
Oh, I need that. Definitely need that. I'm like, let me just sign up now. It's on my computer screen because I think honestly, this is such an incredible offer. And that's what I want to let everybody know. Like, we focus as entrepreneurs so much on our business and we find our identity tied to this business and our success is tied to, who we are as people and are we worthy of this stuff? You are worthy to stop working and fucking focus on yourself once in a while. It is
Well,
so difficult for people to do that. Like, just stop. That's one of my biggest goals this year is one little thing at a time, one little thing at a time. But you've got to stop. I have to get out of this just workaholic. Every time I'm stressed out or something's happening or I don't want to deal with shit that's happening at home, I just stay at work and it's my escape and it's my obsession and it cannot be my life like this anymore. It's already manifesting in other ways. So having a program like this that will give them the tactical things, because I think a lot of people will buy a program and it's a course you take or something, and then you're like, well, thanks for the info, but where the hell do I start? So I love what you're doing with this. It's beautiful.
thank you so much. And to speak on that, the program you're working with either Kelsey and I for 12 weeks. Like you have one-on-ones with us each week, which is really cool too, because that's how we bio-individualize it because everybody is different. And we've definitely had thought about that in the past. Like, do we just make it a course where it's just the content? And I was like, no, I can't. I want to be able to help them because it gets them there so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's support and accountability. And if you're going through something like this, you have to be part of a program where there's some accountability, like a live person in there that's checking in on you too. That's like, because like you were talking about, you start at the beginning with emotional stuff. A lot of emotional shit can come up as to like, why are you working so hard? Like, why are you so afraid you're going to lose this? Like, why? And addressing those first will reveal itself as like the weight situations and things like that. I know I have struggled with all this. I'm just talking about my own story. So I can relate so much to this. It's absolutely crazy. But you have another event that is coming up this next weekend too. So tell us what that is if you're local to the Phoenix area.
Yes, anyone local to the Phoenix area, we are hosting or we are coming to a clinic. It's called Activated Health and Wellness. Dr. Rodarty is an amazing internal medicine doctor. She is who I refer out to with anyone who I kind of feel might have some hormonal imbalance or any issues that I can't, that are out of my scope of practice. She is having us come to her clinic and do a talk. So Dr. Rodarty is going to talk on internal medicine and longevity. So really, how do we take care of ourselves now for later in life so that we're just, doing cartwheels and all the things at 80 or 90. And then I'm going to be doing a talk on kind of how our food choices are associated to our patterns and behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And then Kelsey, my business partner and co-founder of YHHJ, she's going to be doing a guided meditation after. So it's not going to be this like long all day event. It's only going to be an hour, but it's going to be a lot of it jam packed into, let's just say an hour and a half, just in case. But a big amount of stuff jam packed into it. I love giving back to the community, and so does Dr. Rodarty and Kelsey. And so we're really, really excited. There is limited seats, so I think you're going to have the link to register for that. I think we're about halfway full at this point, and it's April 6th at 10 a.m. in Gilbert.
Excellent. And we'll put the links to everything there and throw the address up in there too so people can see if it's somewhere close that they can come and visit. Come to Gilbert. this is where we're from. It's a nice little town. Take a drive, and come, and you'll be able to meet Nicole in person there and get to learn even more about the programs and about her. This has been so incredibly helpful. Again, you just beam positivity and good energy, and that's something that everybody needs a little bit more in their life. So thank you for being like that. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having a follow-up with this and checking out your program and seeing if I can't get my shit together.
You will. And if I can just leave y'all with one last thing, remember,
Yes.
if you want to be around to build this big business, you have to take care of yourself first. So be around for you and put yourself first.
Absolutely. So with that, I always ask everybody at the end of the podcast because I love the way people answer this, and I'm so excited to hear your opinion. When you hear the phrase "ladies kicking ass," what does that mean to you?
I just literally see community. Honestly, I see women supporting women. I see women uplifting women. I see empowerment. That's kind of what I see. I see just strong, beautiful souls that want to impact the world and leave their mark.
Love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. It has been a pleasure. And again, everybody check out all the show note links. There will be a few of them because you got to sign up for this. Follow her Instagram. That will be in there as well. And if you're local, come hang out with us on April 6th.
Yes.